we're going to learn to graph a line whose equation is in standard format. First thing I want to do is go over what is standard form. And standard form is simply something that looks like this. It's an equation that has this format. Don't worry about the letters A, B, and C. A, B, and C just represents any number you could think of, like fractions. It could be a decimal, positive numbers, negative numbers. And in this case, you can see here we have the equation x minus y equals 3. So if I write it underneath, x minus y equals 3. This is standard format because I have my x term over here, my y term is here, and I have the value 3 here. This is called a constant. This is the number without a variable. And that's all standard format is. It's just the locations of the terms in the equation. For instance, something like y equals 2x plus 1, this is not in standard format. The reason why is because we have y over here, but we don't have the x over here. We have x on this side of the equation. In order to put this into standard form, the x would have to be on this side. So that's all standard form is. It's just the x term should be located here, the y term should be located here, and then the constant, the number without the variable, should be located on this side. And that's it. To graph this equation, we have to put it into slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form means we have to solve for y. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take away x from both sides. Bring down my equal sign. I can see here these are going to cancel out. And I have the term negative y left over, so I bring that down. These two here are not like terms, so I can't combine them, so I'm just going to put 3 minus x. And we're almost done. We need to get y by itself, but in this case I can see here that this is a negative y. It's the same thing as saying negative 1y, and we're not solving for a negative 1y, we want positive y. So the last step I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by negative 1 to each term, and I hear this will simplify to positive y. 3 divided by negative 1 gives me negative 3, and this is negative x divided by negative 1, which is going to be positive x. This is slope-intercept form. Y is by itself, and now I'm able to identify two things: the slope, which is m, and the y-intercept, which is going to be the b. Don't forget, slope-intercept form is this format here: y equals mx plus b. The number multiplied with x is the slope. Here I can see that x is here. The number, if I don't see it, I know it's a 1 because there's only one x in front of me. That's my number that I'm going to use for the slope, is 1. And if it's not a fraction, I'm going to put it over 1 because 1 divided by 1 is still 1, so I'm not changing the value of the slope. The next thing I do once I have my slope in the fraction form is I'm going to identify the two movements. Don't forget that the top number represents an up movement or a down movement depending on the value. Since this is a positive 1, that's telling me to move up. The bottom number represents a left or right movement. And since this is a positive 1, that's telling me to move to the right. Then the next thing I identify is the y-intercept, which is the value for b. And in this case, it's the number without the variable. In this case, it's negative 3. So I write down negative 3 for that. And this is the one I'm going to start with for my graph. The y-intercept tells us to go to the y-axis, which is this axis here. You're going to go to the number negative 3, which is right here. Put your first point. Then you're going to use your slope to get to the second point. The slope tells you how to get from this point that we just put to your second point. So from the y-intercept, you're going to go up 1, right 1. So from here, up 1, right 1, put my point, and that's it. Go to my line tool, I click on each point again, and then now I have the graph of the line x minus y equals 3.